I do blue, yeah, you know. Ooh, we are on. For myself, so that's a good thing. All right. Yep. All right, let us call our special meeting to order. This is on the streets master plan, to the most part. I'll turn to our city clerk for a roll call, please.
Mayor Doring,
Here?
Vice Mayor Deasing,
Here.
Councilmember Barrick,
Here.
Councilmember Spoterato.
Here.
All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're on to item 4, adoption of the agenda. Mr. Bradley, any updates on the agenda?
There are none.
No updates. We'll move along to public forum. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during the consideration of the item. Each person's comment should be limited to 4 minutes. So as we get into the item, I'll open it for public comment at that time. As we get further into the staff report and some brief clarifying questions, I'll open it for public comment. At this point, we'll move on to new business. And this is under 6.1, and the title is Adopt a Resolution Accepting the St. Helena Streets Master Plan, May 2026, and directing staff to utilize the plan to guide future capital improvement planning, grant applications, and transportation project implementation. And I'll note that there is a resolution that was slightly amended on 4/30/2026 that is in our packet. I'll turn now to our interim city manager, Mr. McCann, to introduce the item, and we'll get started.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Happy Cinco de Mayo to all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have, I think, a very exciting item for you today, one that follows from a good discussion that we had at your last meeting where you talked about the water treatment facility and a comprehensive assessment of the conditions there and a set of ideas and a plan, a master plan of sorts to bring that forward over the next several years. This is similar, a different system. So instead of water, another essential system, it's our network of streets and sidewalks and pathways. So this, again, is a master plan looking at our existing conditions, looking at our needs, and then trying to prioritize those, addressing our limited and finite resources, all of which over the years, funding that will have to be found as we move forward. But for now, it's really a comprehensive assessment of our systems. It's a good look at those things. It reflects input from the community about what's important for today and what's kind of aspirational for down the road. There's a lot of numbers, lots of shocking numbers, but there's also hope, and there's also organization that allows us to pursue things in a logical fashion over the years. And so I would look at it as what it is, a high-level master plan, organizing things, providing us with some priority and some structure as we move forward in a strategic fashion. So Mr. Leach has done a lot of work on this. Our consultants, I think, have put together a really fine plan. It's a good opportunity to take a little time and walk through it and place your own prints on it as far as priorities and timing, and quiz us up on a number of questions that I'm sure you have. So, Joe, thanks for the work on this.
Certainly. Thanks, Mr. McCann, and Mayor and council members, members of the public. This is kind of the culmination of, I think we originally executed this agreement in 2024 with a Tool Design Group, so about a year and a half, close to 2 years. So there probably should be some champagne to celebrate this moment, but maybe as we figure out the funding to deliver projects, that'll be the next moment for celebrating with champagne. But I do want to introduce who we have attending the meeting with us this evening virtually. Anju Palta is a urban designer, planner, and associate with Tool Design Group. They were the prime consultant on this project. And then with Farron Pierce, Ian Barnes is a professional engineer transportation engineer, as well as senior market leader and principal with Farron Pierce. And then we also have Jillian Zhao, who is a transportation planner with Farron Pierce, and they were integral in the project development and delivery. And with that, I will pass the baton to Anju. I guess what I would encourage is that we move through the presentation. I think we have about maybe 24 slides, maybe closer to 30. And hold questions till we get to the end, unless it's really burning and it's related to a slide, because subsequent slides might answer some of those questions along the way. And with that, outstanding. Thank you, sir.
No questions.
Outstanding. Appreciate that. Take it
All right,
away, Anju.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to walk through a refresher of what the project is, what the final plan structure includes. After that, I'll talk about comments that we received during our most recent public review period of the full draft plan and discuss some key themes that emerged from that feedback and how we responded to them. I'll also touch on some key outcomes of the plan and talk about funding and implementation and next steps. And I think Joe has a few closing remarks as well. Next slide. And next one, please. So the project area encompasses all of the city of St. Helena, with the exception of the downtown specific plan area, which is outlined in red. So our project does not include the area inside that red line. Next slide. So the goal of the plan really wasn't to redo work that's already been done. It's really about bringing everything together. We're taking recommendations from past plans, reports, and studies and pulling them into one place. So there's a clear, unified direction moving forward for the future of transportation and circulation in St. Helena. And this plan is really about improving safety and mobility for all modes, with a real focus on expanding and strengthening walking and biking connections so people can move more easily and safely through the city. Another important piece is making sure we're supporting critical emergency access and egress. So that includes looking at some of the key street extensions and potential bridge projects that can help improve connectivity and resiliency in the future. And ultimately, this plan is really about guiding future investments, so helping the city better understand where to focus resources and what projects should be prioritized over time. Next slide. So we kicked off the plan, as Joe said, in spring of 2024, looking at existing conditions, including compiling an inventory of proposed projects from previous plans. From there, we prioritized those projects and identified a set of key projects to advance into high-level conceptual design, alongside developing a series of streetscape toolkits as well. In early 2025, our team worked on developing the draft plan and finalizing recommendations while continuing to shape the proposed network-wide improvement, so that larger view as well. And then over the fall of 2025 to spring 2026, the draft plan was refined and prepared for public review, and then updated and finalized based on that feedback, which we'll be talking more about. Next slide. So through the process, we've had ongoing engagement at key points along the way, including 3 major community touch points, focus groups, pop-ups, and a public workshop, and online draft plan that invited community feedback. We've also had 3 ATSC meetings and a study session with council. Next slide. And just want to, one back. Yeah, just want to call out that council meeting, the last time we met with you was in December 2024 to review the network-wide proposed project and share the outcomes of our prioritization. Which I'll give a refresher of today as well. Next slide. So looking at the plan structure itself, so this is our final deliverable, our final document. The first part of the plan focuses on context and project process. So it includes the project overview, existing conditions analysis, and a summary of our community engagement work. From there, the plan transitions into our network-wide recommendations, which are organized into bicycle facilities, intersection improvements, and roadway extension or bridge projects. The final section focuses on implementation. So in that chapter, there's our project prioritization outcomes, financing strategies, sequence strategies, and considerations related to stormwater and utilities as well. Finally, the plan, go back one more. It's a long plan. The plan also provides conceptual design for key projects. So those key projects include Spring Street and the Adams Street extension. And we also include a little bit of a deeper dive analysis on some previous design work done for the Oak Street extension. So in addition to the main plan chapters, the document also includes appendices that provide technical information. So those include cost opinions for all the network-wide projects, prioritization methodology used to evaluate those projects, as well as a summary of community engagement. So more detailed summary of community engagement than what's included in the plan document itself. There's also a stormwater and utilities analysis and a synchro traffic analysis, which I'll talk a bit more about later in the presentation, and Ian and Jillian worked deeply on that analysis and led that. Next slide. So a little bit about what we heard from the public. The draft plan was open for public review from January 22nd to February 16th and was advertised through several channels, including the city newsletter, the city homepage, the Public Works webpage, the Streets Master Plan webpage, and city social media channels. During that period, we received a total of 68 comments. It's worth noting that 46 of the comments were submitted by one person. The remaining comments were submitted by several other community members, and typically folks left about one to six comments each. Next slide. So we reviewed all of the comments received during that public review period and identified several reoccurring themes. So one area of feedback related to the proposed bicycle network and the selection of different kinds of bikeways. So there were questions about the appropriateness of class 1, 2, and 3 facilities in certain locations. We also received several comments about the need to comply with daylighting laws at intersections, particularly related to improving visibility and safety at schools. Another related theme involved requests for additional bulb outs and curb extensions at key intersections. Sidewalks was another kind of theme that we got comments about. So for sidewalks, the plan currently identifies gap areas in the network, but it does not evaluate sidewalk condition. So several comments requested that the plan acknowledge issues related to sidewalk condition and ADA accessibility as well. There were also comments seeking clarification on some of the cost ranges associated with bike facilities. And finally, several comments about concerns about potential parking loss along Spring Street related to proposed curb extensions. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we addressed those comments. So for bike network and facility selection, the proposed facility types generally we maintained. We did not change them. Facility types were selected based on roadway context, traffic speeds, functional classification, and coordination with NVTA active transportation plan. So they are also undergoing a county-wide bike plan. So we were working with them to coordinate our recommendations, and we're working from the same set of assumptions about facility selection. But when change was made, Madrona Avenue was updated from a class 2 bike lane to a class 3 bike boulevard, and that was following some direct recommendations from the ATSC. For daylighting at intersections, the plan has been updated to reference AB 413 and include a system-wide recommendation for red curb daylighting where appropriate to improve intersection visibility and safety. So that's been addressed through plan text. For the request for bulb outs and curb extensions, the city was able to provide guidance on several locations where we could actually suggest improvements like bulb outs. So the plan was updated to recommend bulb outs at Hillview near the middle school entrance and Hillview at Kearney. There were other comments where other areas were suggested, but improvements have already either been installed there or are included in the CIP, or further study will be needed for those additional locations. For sidewalk and sidewalk conditions and ADA surfaces, we did update plan language to acknowledge that there are areas where sidewalks are in poor condition or experiencing displacement. We did not get into the level of detail about ADA compliance with tactile surface design or specific accessibility treatments. That's just will require a finer level of design detail once projects move towards construction. And then lastly, regarding cost estimates for Class 1 and Class 2 facilities, we did find a discrepancy in quantities used for the lower end of Class 2 facility cost development. So that was corrected in the final plan, which ended up reducing the lower end cost range for that facility type. And lastly, with respect to parking loss on Spring Street due to curb extensions, no changes were made there. The curb extensions actually show and reflect compliance with AB 413, where parking will already be restricted near the intersection, so that parking loss will already happen through that bill. Next slide. Okay, now I want to turn to a few key areas in the plan itself, including network-wide recommendations, the synchro analysis, and our implementation plan. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we put together proposed network-wide projects that came from multiple sources. There's been a lot of good work that's already been done that we didn't want to discount or recreate, including proposals from the general plan, the Napa Bike Plan, Napa County Walk Audit Reports, among many others. So where there were gaps, we made further recommendations and adjustments as needed. Next slide. So from that exercise, we identified 46 bikeway projects, 39 crossing improvement projects, and 9 roadway extension and bridge projects, which include 2 bridge replacements and 7 roadway extensions with 3 new bridges. So all of these projects then building our universe of network-wide proposals. Next slide. We then applied a set of metrics to help prioritize those projects. These included community support, access to key destinations like schools and parks. Safety was another metric, looking at recent crash locations as being priority locations. Connectivity, meaning how well a project fills a gap or strengthens the overall network. And feasibility. So that includes considerations like right-of-way needs and potential environmental constraints. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some priority projects that came through kind of our different buckets of projects. So first, bikeways. Several high-impact, more conceptual projects rose to the top. Most notably, the Sulphur Creek Trail and Napa River Trail. I would say a major factor here was strong community preference for off-street facilities, so trail-like facilities that are, one, safer and also provide not only kind of a transportation route, but a recreational opportunity as well. Adams Street and its proposed extension along with Crane Avenue also ranked highly. Next slide. So crossings, for crossings and intersections, it's probably not a surprise that several Main Street locations rose to the top, along with 2 intersections near Robert Louis Stevenson Middle School. So safety was a key factor here, really kind of prioritizing intersections with higher traffic volumes, turning conflicts, and importantly, the presence of students and families. Next slide. For roadway extension and bridge projects, The Adams Street extension ranked highest, also aligning with its role as a key bike project that came to the top as well, followed by Oak Avenue extension and Pope Street Bridge realignment. So all of these road extension and bridge projects are high impact, but these three really stood out as especially transformative for the overall street network. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to briefly discuss the synchro analysis that was conducted. And this was really meant to take a closer look at how the Adams Street and Oak Avenue extension, as well as the Pope Street Bridge project, compare in their potential to improve intersection operations, reduce congestion, and support traffic flow along Main Street, while also potentially enhancing emergency routing. So really taking those top three projects and then testing them. So at a high level, the analysis found that all three alternatives provide improvements to intersection operations and congestion. However, the Oak Avenue extension to Grayson delivers some of the greatest system-wide benefits. The Adams Street extension and Oak Avenue extension to Charter Oak, so that phase one, that's the smaller part of the extension of Oak, offer more moderate improvements, while Pope Street Bridge provides more localized benefits. Next slide. So this slide summarizes the key benefits and constraints for each alternative beyond just the synchro results. So that's really the synchro is looking at traffic operations and operational improvements. However, each option also comes with it some other important trade-offs. So starting with Oak Avenue extension to Grayson again, provides the strongest system-wide benefit by creating a new parallel route to Main Street, so really reducing reliance on Main Street, though it comes with higher impacts and some constraints like extensive property acquisition and a new creek crossing as well. The Adams Street extension offers a valuable new east-west connection and could play a role in regional emergency access, but it also involves more complex infrastructure and construction. So it includes a river crossing and considerations for building on top of the existing levee that runs along the alignment. The phase one Oak Avenue extension improves local connectivity and neighborhood circulation, especially for those shorter local trips, though its benefits are more moderate since it doesn't extend as far as the full phase two Oak extension. And then lastly, the Pope Street Bridge improves an existing connection. It enhances operations, improves emergency access, helps with a lot of the bottlenecks we know happen at that bridge. But its benefits are more localized and it provides less overall congestion relief to the network. So it's really a balance between sort of performance, cost, construction complexity, emergency egress potential, all sort of playing into this. Next slide. So with that, importantly, we want to note that we did meet with the ATSC on March 4th, and the committee approved a motion to recommend Adams Street extension as their highest priority and the Oak extension as the lowest priority. Next slide. So last thing I'm going to talk about is funding and implementation. At a high level, we can think about these projects in a few buckets based on their level of investment and overall scale. Next slide. So crossing improvements, generally lower cost, targeted safety upgrades. Bikeways fall into more of a moderate investment category. So these are corridor level improvements like adding a bike lane, reconfiguring roadway space, or implementing traffic calming. So a bit of a jump up from a crossing improvement. And then roadway extension and bridges are the most complex. So these are large scale infrastructure projects that really require significant investment, longer timelines, environmental review, and coordination across agencies. Next slide. So getting a little bit into costs, project costs vary depending on the type of improvement. So crossing enhancements can range from relatively low cost treatments like high visibility crosswalks, which is really just paint on the road, to more substantial investments like installation of an RFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So like you can see on the text here, a range of 4K for the crosswalk to something that's more than 100K for something like an RFB, along with other improvements. Next slide. Bike facility costs were developed on a per mile basis and vary by facility type, with treatments like bike boulevards on the lower end range of costs, and class 1 pass, that being a trail-like facility, representing the higher end of the cost range. Next slide. The more complex roadway extension and bridge projects really fall outside of a typical unit cost assumption. They require a much more nuanced approach to costing and additional considerations like right-of-way, environmental permitting, construction complexity. So we did provide high-level planning estimates for Adams Street extension and Oak Avenue extension, and have those here for you to reference. Okay, next slide. So I just want to talk about funding and implementation on a really high level. I think, it's already been said, but the streets master plan will take time, and it will rely on a mix of funding sources. Projects will generally move forward through the city's capital improvement program as they're prioritized and as funding becomes available. Measure U will continue to be a key source of funding, but the city will also be looking to other opportunities like grants, development impact fees, and developer contributions to help fund some of these projects. So just want to reiterate that overall this plan isn't something that happens all at once. This is really a roadmap, and improvements will be implemented incrementally over time as funding and opportunities arise. Next slide. So that's it for me. Thank you all for letting me present this work tonight, and I will hand it back to Joe.
Well, thank you, Anju. So really what the next steps is, I would put in the category of the fun part, is really figuring out what we want to deliver when as a community, and then determine the sources of funding associated with that. I think we've talked a number of times in this forum where Measure U is a vital component of our transportation funding. It's allowed us to go from a pavement condition index of 43 a few years ago to now we're up to mid to high 60s, and we're aspiring to get to 75 or 80 within the next couple of years. So then the idea is, well, once we get to 75 or 80 as a community value, then we'll end up having a fair amount of not enough to fund the entire program, but monies that can go towards knocking off a variety of the projects that are listed in the Streets Master Plan. So the idea is that staff would come back to you at some point, probably in July or August, with a implementation strategy for review and discussion, including some proposals related to funding opportunities that are some that are listed in the plan, between updating impact fees, developer contributions, grants, and from there we would figure out a schedule as to some that we would put in the category of short term. I think some of the terms that Finance Committee has used to evaluate projects. Short-term needs, if they're related to health and safety, things that we could deliver with some of our current pavement projects like intersection improvements, safety enhancements, versus the medium term, maybe some bike trails, and then the longer term, clearly those are the roadway extensions that require a more robust strategy and plan to fund both short, medium, and long term. And with that, next slide. We are available to field any questions you might have.
I think what I'll do is open it for public comment. We'll probably have to get into a little discussion here, maybe more in-depth kinds of questions. But anybody wishing to make public comment at this point, please do. Mr. Keneally, welcome.
Hey there. I submitted a written comment. There's a little bit more specific, but I Just thought I'd come today and offer a general piece of advice as you guys are considering this, and hopefully offer it in a constructive spirit. As a reader of the plan, I brought away two big impressions. The first was that some of the concern for bicycle and non-automotive traffic seemed to trump some of the actual concerns of how the population of the town really travels. When you think of a town our size, with a shrinking population, with an even faster shrinking school population, the number of bikers that's in the town is underrepresented at both ends. There's not as many kids as are often in cities, and there's many more senior citizens who are not of biking age in the city. The second thing I wanted to sort of take up is that every time that we make an improvement in good efforts, the more than a dozen no parking signs in front of the cemetery on Spring Street, the bike lane that was put by accident in the middle of the street, there's an overall cost to pay that's not just financial. It's what I've come to start thinking about as the creeping suburbanization of St. Helena. And as we try to upgrade safety in a city that doesn't seem to have a safety problem, that doesn't seem to have crushing traffic problems, that doesn't have pedestrian accidents very often in the many, many years I've lived here, I would just offer a spirit of caution to say that maybe the silent majority in the town would say that we maybe want to approach this in a less is more kind of a spirit. And with the realization that the real population of the town goes by car, then by walking, then by biking. And specifically some of the rezoning of the streets and the over control of this traffic, I think, comes at a visual as well as a financial cost.
Thank you. Interesting comments. Take your time, Mr. Corsetti. We don't have a lot of folks behind you today.
So one of the issue that really affects me personally is street crossing at where I live on Spring Street, right at the intersection of Kearney and Spring. And as you all know, that's right. Actually, I'm the first house from Oak going westward, and so on our street we've got Native Sons, we've got the church that's being renovated right now, and across the street we have the Episcopal and the Presbyterian churches. So my house is right where it intersects Kearney, and right now we have a crosswalk that I have no problem with that particular one being renovated and extended out and doing whatever needs to be done for compliance. But the proposal is to include the second crossing, which is on the western side of Kearney intersecting. So it's 30 feet apart, but they both come in right where my home is. And with doing that one, with the extension going out from Spring Street out, and I assume that's about a 5-foot extension. I don't know exactly how far that is. But what it does is it eliminates that one parking space in front of my house because of that extension, which runs from basically from my drive. The extension runs from my driveway to what's the current driveway at the church next door, the new community church that's being built. And the other factor is that if we just continue with the one that's there right now, there's a red no parking zone in front of my house because there's a fire hydrant right at the corner of my home there. Mm-hmm. And so that's always been there. And so I have no problem with that part being extended out because it's already no parking to begin with. But I really don't like the idea of having this crossing, the new crossing, because it starts at my driveway, and then now there's not only no parking, but there's also my barrels on Tuesday mornings are being picked up. If that's extended out, I have no place except in front of that extension to put my barrels. So that takes, I don't know how that works with the traffic plan there. But to me, it doesn't make any sense to put a second crosswalk in when you already have one 30 feet away. So I dispute that. I don't know about the ADA compliance, whatever, but we already have a crosswalk there. And in fact, one of the ladies, Miss Calderon, I believe her name is, she was complaining about basically on Pope Street where there's a crosswalk there. There was already an existing one. Now they've added another one over at, I believe, at Edward Street. And she's saying that, you know, she has a stroller and some elderly gentleman was driving the other day and he got confused because he saw people in one, but he didn't see, actually there were people in the other, and he almost hit him. So to me, it doesn't make no sense at all to be putting on that second crosswalk on Spring Street, not only for myself, because I have people who visit me, we have people who come and do work at my house, we have people who are going to the Native Sons, et cetera, and that space, and plus now, of course, Spring Grove is only 100 yards away, so that's going to have overflow parking as well. That's my case. Thank you.
Well done, Counselor. Please, welcome.
My name is E. Maria White Calderon, so that was me that made
Yeah,
that
welcome.
comment.
Thank you for your public comment.
Yeah. So I guess regarding the bump outs, I was just noticing the one on Pope. I don't know if the intention was to have that double crosswalk, but I agree that I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I think this town, kind of going back to what Mr. Keneally was saying, people move here for the agrarian feeling, for the calmness, for just kind of a humble landscape, streetscape. I don't think people move here to have this very urban feeling. And so I don't know if it's necessary to add, I love some of the ideas on the plan, especially connectivity, things like, the Cronella apartments in the back, those need to be connected somehow into the town. But two things that I was going to say about the bump outs is very specific. Once they start being implemented, I don't know if there is a requirement in terms of like narrowness of where the tactile yellow domes are, because once you start putting all those curbs and creating those little islands of concrete that kind of pop out everywhere, it really is a trip hazard. They seem unnecessary, even though, like, I understand in certain situations how they could look really nice. But when it's just a tiny little island the size of this booth with like a 6-inch curb around it and pointy corners everywhere, I just don't think it's necessary. I think just a very simple curb ramp is enough. And I think, like, how can we achieve all of this vision, which I think is great, but just in a very simple way that's not going to be too expensive. And, without, I know ADA compliance is important and everything, but just trying to keep it humble and keep it agrarian as to the most extent as possible, because that's why people move here. So, and one more thing. So I have 4 kids. 2, I have a double stroller, and sometimes when I'm on the sidewalk, there's all these posts that get added, later behind the curb on the sidewalk. And I don't know if there's a way to reduce the amount of posts with signage, because they are in the sidewalk. And like Mr. Keneally was saying, a lot of us walk. There's some of us that bike, and a lot of children prefer to bike on the sidewalk. I know we're not supposed to, but that's just what parents tell their children to do. And if we have all these posts, every 20 feet, it really is dangerous for the community. And I just don't think we really need them. Nobody reads them, and it's just clutter. So again, less is more. I agree with, the big picture and creating connectivity. Like you were saying, Adams Street, like that seems interesting. And the Pope Addition Bridge, that seems interesting. But I don't think we need to do too much to make this town, better. So that's it.
Thank you. I'm amazed that someone who has 4 kids is able to come to a meeting at 4 o'clock. God bless you, ma'am. Wonderful. Anyone, last up? Ms. Haley? All right, let me close the public comment and let's bring back a little bit of discussion. Let me start off with a couple of higher level questions. maybe to our consultant. I know, first of all, I do believe that there's a push and probably a necessity to consolidate plans in Napa County. We have a lot of plans that have built up over the years. I've been involved in the transportation, Napa Valley Transportation Authority for many years on 2 different councils, and I've seen that evolve over many years. And just recently, the county adopted a countywide active transportation plan, and I know that that consolidated a couple existing plans. And I'm just wondering how you keep up with that change and incorporate the new recently adopted active transportation plan countywide to make sure that we have some alignment and consistency there.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that and speak specifically to the NVTA recent ATP updates. So we've been working with the consultants, working with the county who are developing that kind of countywide bike plan and have been coordinating our recommendations with theirs. So we will be in alignment and are recognizing where, if there are discrepancies, which they are minimal, those are included in the actual streets master plan, like where any discrepancies lie between the 2 plans. So that is one, I guess, serendipitous project that was lucky to happen at the same time as this one, so we could really coordinate the two efforts.
Yeah, that is a wonderful serendipity having Tool on both projects. I noted that, and I think that is a good thing for us to see that connection. Let's talk a little bit more about the outreach, completely different issue, but the outreach seemed to be limited and the response seemed to be limited. And I'm just wondering, maybe we can't step back, but going to the future, we can get more. I think there's some bias built into these outreach programs. We go to the typical outreach connections, which are like the farmers market or meetings, those kinds of things. But I would submit, and it would be interesting to know if there are any demographics to support this. I would submit that younger people are not involved in giving their opinions about their community. I think about the CIA. We have the CIA where we have students crossing a major highway, and there's just those close calls. I would submit that we may not have a whole lot of pedestrian accidents, but I've been here for over 35 years, and I've seen, and maybe my lawyer brain takes me to it, but I see a lot of close calls every day of driving. But to the youth, to the high schoolers, to bicyclists, folks who are actually out there every day, how much interaction did we have with them? And I guess, could we do better in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't see Joe, but
Yep.
I
Or if it's for Joe, that's fine too.
Yeah, you can.
or no,
you
I'm
can,
happy to answer, Joe. You let me know.
you can start, Andrew, and then
Okay.
I'll take the baton.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I think, it's outreach looks different in every community, and what works in each community is different. We tried multiple avenues to get people to engage. So we did go to the Harvest Festival and do a pop-up there. We did the sort of online component with the draft plan, trying to make that accessible for folks virtually, given that it's such a large document. We also conducted focus groups at the kind of launch of the project, which included, I believe, representation from St. Helena Unified. But school-age children, I think, it's always a challenge to get them to engage in projects like this, just given, I think, timing of the events and trying to meet them where they are. Maybe in this project, conducting more pop-ups at the schools themselves could have been something we did. Sometimes we'll do intercept surveys and try to meet people on the road just biking where they are. We didn't do that for this project, but I think just given the density of St. Helena and the number of cyclists and pedestrians out at one time might have not been a great use of our resources. I don't know how many people we would have gotten that way.
Understood.
I'd love for Joe to.
Yeah, I think the other ideas that comes to my mind is partnering with the schools and maybe coming into a class. an appropriate class and having a half-hour presentation interaction, working with teachers and being able to do that. I think that's, as you're talking about, Mr. Mayor, about engagement with the schools and the users of these facilities and getting their, call it on-the-ground view of things that are happening or being proposed, I think is invaluable. So I think future endeavors, I can see us reaching out to the district and saying, is there a way that we can partner with a civics class or something along those lines?
I want to touch upon a comment that was made in different ways by different folks. This notion of maybe over urbanizing our community. And I know there's a number of ADA compliance issues, all kinds of legal constraints that we have when we construct, ADA facilities or any kind of facility in the community. But there is a point there to be made. Seems like a lot of the improvements we make, and I walk around town, seem to be overly complicated. Even just right across the street from the general store, that there's these little ramps that have curbs, curbed ramps. I've tripped on that a couple times, but and
probably an opportunity.
I'm
to
an able
yellow or
walker,
something along
but
those
there is
lines.
something to that. But I also recognize, we have the legal constraints, so there's always that balance. What I think it's a good point that we want to kind of maintain that small town character, and not look like overly urban. But I know there's a balance. What say you, Mr. Leach, on that issue?
So there's a couple things that mandate bringing intersections up to current ADA standards. Mm-hmm. When we do a pavement rehabilitation project, which is laying down more than, I think it's a half an inch of material, then per state code, we have to update that intersection to current ADA standards. So for example, Oak Avenue, when we're going to go through the process later this summer to rehabilitate the entire pavement section and the streets and curb and gutter and sidewalk, each one of those intersections that haven't already been brought up to current standards will be required to. Now, and Andrew and Ian can speak to this, if we decide to incorporate bulb outs, which is an extra layer of safety, that's not mandated by state law. It's a preferred recommendation because it allows for additional visibility between vehicles and pedestrians. But there's other means and methods to be able to do that. Increasing red curb painting so there's more visibility and less curbs adjacent to where pedestrians travel. So, but there's triggers along the way that require us to do what we do. So some of those constraints associated with, I would put in the category of creative ramps that we've developed on Oak Street in conjunction with existing power poles and drainage inlets and some of the other things that are going on there. Mm-hmm. A lot of challenges associated with old infrastructure and incorporating new current requirements.
Yeah, I'll defer to my colleagues in a second. I was interested to know what was the basis of the ATSC's motion or recommendation to highly prioritize Adams Street and put the Oak extension in a less priority situation. What was the discussion in a few sentences?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they looked at the bike and ped improvements and they kind of adopted it as the priority as presented, but felt like they needed to kind of weigh in on what is their recommendation from as a committee in terms of the priority of significant investment that would be required for either one of those extensions. And so that's where they kind of took the nuance of let's vote for the highest priority and the lowest priority and let the council decide in between.
All right. I'll have other questions, but I'll defer other comments or questions from my colleagues. I'll keep going then. Let's see. Maybe this is for the consultant. So you had laid out some of the objectives, some of the sort of the metrics that you would judge this plan by. You talked about safety, connectivity, those kinds of things. You're trying to achieve these goals. I noticed in a lot of other plans in the county, the notion of equity comes up, and that does not seem to be something, maybe there's some legal sort of ramifications there that we don't have the need for that. I would submit we do, but what are your thoughts in terms of equity, in terms of how we are placed in our town, whether seniors in a certain location or apartments in a certain location, or, populations, demographics, that kind of equity is what I'm talking about. Did that come up, or is that something that is not really part of your ambit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say on other kind of comparable plans for other jurisdictions, generally people use equity priority areas as a designation to kind of ground the location of projects as a priority. So if your project falls within an equity priority area, it might be of higher need or higher priority. St. Helena is not in an equity priority area, so that wouldn't be one of the metrics we use. But you mentioned seniors. We definitely looked at school-age children as one sort of demographic that we wanted to really focus on, improving connectivity and safety for school-age children, and particularly for school-age children who are walking and biking to school. So that was definitely one of the reasons why Spring Street was selected as a key project, knowing that a lot of school-age children use that street to go to school, and knowing that there aren't continuous sidewalks there. So understanding how we could make that happen in the future, make something safer and more separated from car traffic. Crosswalks, that was also a metric that was embedded. Location close to schools, improved crosswalks were brought higher up the list.
All right.
So I would say school-age children was one way that we tried to address equity.
All right. Thank you. So looking at another issue that's related to that, but it's a completely different issue. I've been here long enough to know that our businesses have certain transportation needs, and it's that often does not come up. What are the goals to help our economy, help our business run more smoothly, help folks get products from one place to another. And most of us who live there long enough know that there are trucks parked all over the city in weird places, like turn lanes, and it's just just a whole kind of a motley crew of different kinds of. Do those issues come up? I mean, could we maybe in the future sort of focus on how we could make that happen more from a business, commercial, industrial point of view, to make sure that we are doing as much as we can? And maybe it happens indirectly through the connectivity and those other issues that you had focused on. But it just seems to me that it's sort of an issue that folks don't pay that much attention to, and it just is what it is. But we're in a very congested area, and there are very few places for bigger trucks, bigger buses, bigger whatever to park and move around the community. I'm not necessarily promoting that, but it is a need, and it's a reality that we have right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, we did look at existing truck routes and how freight movement operates in St. Helena, and that was one piece of our kind of existing conditions analysis. I would say importantly, our site area did not include the downtown specific plan area, so all of the kind of loading and access needs to downtown we didn't explore. But it's certainly, knowing that you have a lot of agriculture and that kind of industry and the needs that come with that, it is really important. So understanding how to right size the roads that really fall on those lines for freight movement is absolutely, important. It's not something we explored deeply in this plan, but recognize that is an important part of circulation.
And I think, Mr. Mayor and Council, just to remind the context of why the downtown specific plan was excluded.
Please.
Yeah, I think if you may or may not recall, the downtown specific plan and the streets master plan were on parallel paths. Kind of the goal was to have them adopted at or near the same time, so there was kind of circulation synergies, potentially intensification of land use within the DSP, that could be addressed. and that there was, some connectivity, both figuratively and literally, between the two plans. It was elected to put the plan on pause, and so the streets master plan is kind of moved forward, but the streets master plan kind of looked at the DSP as a black box, that was going to be self-contained, and the details of that plan analyzed within the DSP. So that's kind of why Andrew has alluded a couple times as to why it was excluded from the streets master plan.
All right. Just last comment, and then I guess we'll wrap it up. I know we have another meeting following this. I have an observation, just being involved in the NVTA for so many years, and just living here. Most of us, even folks who are in this doing this work, have maybe a skeletal sense of funding. Funding to me is the most archaic, mind-numbing in the transportation field. It is so difficult to get your hands around that, and it's such a challenge. So we have all this great work to be done, and I would submit that it would be helpful if we can find, somebody to do a workshop on Funding 101. It's because there's so many different sources of funding that we can tap into, and I don't think we're fully actually getting the dollars to our community that we could get. And I know NVTA is a source, excellent resource there, but what is your sense? And present company excluded, of course. But it's mind-numbing.
Yes.
With all the acronyms that come out and all the different sources of state, federal, local, all the grants, the bond measures, all these different things. It's just mind-numbing. It would be nice. Maybe that's an AI question that I'll ask one of these days. But what are your thoughts on that, either Mr. McCann or Mr. Leach, in terms of could we benefit from learning more about that so that we can move this plan forward? Because we don't have the dollars, and we may never get the dollars to see a lot of the great work that's in this plan be accomplished.
I resoundingly agree that financing associated with transportation projects is mind-numbing. And so the tapping into resources like, through Thompson's office, through Curry Aguiar's office, through our, various state and federal representatives' offices, those are key conversations to have in terms of the timing of when things are beginning to be programmed. I think the other side of it too is coming to council and the community to determine what are the priorities, again, as we get through some of the heavy lift of needs for Measure U. As that begins to diminish and we move into a more of a pavement maintenance program for Measure U funding, which is about $2.5 million a year, which is kind of why we've been able to get up, as high as we have in our PCI over the last several years. But to be able to kind of leverage that money towards the match of larger infrastructure projects, even to the point of starting the design or some initial studies. Like, for example, the Adams Street extension, that's, in design is probably a 5-year project, just design, between the environmental studies and preliminary design. And so should the council decide to take some of that Measure U money towards the design process, and then that becomes more attractive to state and federal funding because you have what could be considered a shovel-ready project. So there's things that we can do that's part of what I would call the funding dance. But there's also, I think, the study that EPS put together that's an appendix to this study goes into a lot of different types of funding structures that the city could embark on. EFIDs, I think I got the acronym correctly. Probably not. I think it's EIFD. Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. I mean, those are things that municipalities have at their disposal. It's equivalent to a funding mechanism to fund infrastructure. So all that to say, I think that's going to be part of what we present at our next step is implementation and a funding strategy. I don't know if Mr. McCann wanted to add more before Vice Mayor.
Sure. The funding is, I'm not sure, I guess I would say it's probably the most difficult aspect. Thinking up projects and finding solutions for issues or expanding facilities is fun and much easier than finding the funds for it. But we have to define that universe of projects, and then we have to identify priorities, because resources are finite, both our own and those that are available in a regional setting or statewide or federally. And there are a lot of communities, in the same state as we are and going through the same processes. But it's always best to do your homework and have things set up so that when an opportunity arises, we're able to participate. And so that's the prioritization of those things. The other thing is to recognize sort of what we have from a facility standpoint, but also from a resource standpoint. And so there's been a lot of work going on over the last year or so with our finance committee, identifying what our balance is, if you will. What are our real expenses and what funds does the city have? And then we're simultaneously looking at assessments of our systems. I mentioned the water system, a different part of our infrastructure, but certainly this. In a couple of weeks, you'll be reviewing a parks master plan. So a look at all of our park facilities that exist today and those that are desired in the future. We'll be looking at the downtown specific plan, as Joe mentioned. There's also a hiking and trails plan that has been developed. Those are all wonderful, but they all cost money. And so that helps the council to understand that universe of needs and desires. And then we have to prioritize those things. And so that helps us to realize what that dollar amount might be, and then to focus on vehicles to fund those. And some of them are within our control. They're local. They're things that we can talk about. Others require voter approval, local voters, or regional. Measure U didn't exist before, and we didn't get that $2 million every year. So we had to balance our needs with general fund. We made the argument, we made the plans, we decided what we wanted, and Measure U provides those funds for us to increase our pavement condition index. That same kind of measure, if we worked at it, could also identify some of these other improvements, whether it's an extension of a road or a program for bicycle improvements or whatnot. So there's different funding vehicles, and I think it would be very helpful for the community and for the council to look at or to receive a presentation that explains all of those different things. So as we go through these different projects and proposals and our master plans, we have a sense of what the reality is as far as funding and how we might go about doing that. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing when I meet at NDTA. I think we can do it in either venue, so that would be great. I'm not sure. Did you have a question? I had one more thought in my brain, but Vice Mayor, or no? Or a comment? Please.
I do have one question about how we're thinking about the top priority at $59 million, and what if there's something like if X happens, then that's enough to get us rolling. Anyway, it's hard for me to imagine. I don't need an answer. I just noticed it. But the other thing I was thinking about was Mr. Keneally's comment about that people get around with cars right now, and I wonder if the environment were different, would that change? More walking and more biking. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we'd build it all and everyone would still just drive around. But maybe if you build it, they will come. That's all.
Yeah, maybe if we had more open space and trails too, it might help. While it's on my mind, I think these various questions from our constituents, our community members, raises a question in my mind. So I'm now turning to the resolution itself that we're about to adopt, and I wanted to have you, Mr. McCann, maybe opine on that a little bit more. So I think it's important, and maybe you'll agree with me or not, that to emphasize that we're not approving any plan tonight, and I think that may be spelled out in the resolution. But talk about the resolution, what its purpose is, and what the limitations are, and what the staff is asking us to do. But I want to assure folks that this is not the final say on the more nuanced specific projects or existing conditions that exist in the community. There's more to do to weigh in on those as they come forward. Because there could be some improvements that are not addressed in this plan.
Oh, sure. Yep.
On the sort of the micro level.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So the resolution, I think the title says quite a bit about it. And among the words in there, there are a few that say that this is a master plan that the city staff and the city will utilize to plan, to utilize the plan to guide future transportation planning, capital improvement, programming, and implementation efforts. So to me, that says it. It's a document that we're going to use. It's going to inform our budgeting. It's going to inform our proposed capital improvement programs that we present to you all. But it's for future efforts. So all of those, this doesn't approve anything. It brings the plan, brings it together, takes all of that stuff and focuses it, sort of distilling it in the essence of these different aspects of transportation, roads, intersections, extensions, all of the things. And then that gives us a framework to move forward with those things that make sense to us in a sequential fashion, that are within our immediate budgetary ability, and we'll recommend those in forthcoming capital improvement programs and capital improvement budgets. That has to be matched up with money. And then the other things are important too. We know we don't have the funds to construct the $50+ million project, but at some point, we'll probably propose that we enter into some level of design so that we understand it better, we can refine it better, and that'll then be a jump-off spot to actually look at funding and develop financial plans. But there's a whole lot that this doesn't do, but what it does do is helps to organize things so we can be much more strategic in future. Those future activities will all require city council action through, again, the CIP and budgeting, and will be very much influenced by public input about, is it the right time? Is this the right type of improvement? The details that people spoke about, the number of signs, the color of the signs, the truncated domes, the little things you see on the ADA ramps. There's different colors. They don't all have to be, bright yellow. There's different ways you can do those things that have different sense, just from a design sense. And so those are the details that come out as we design it. Right now, we're at the very high level, and we're going to bring it down.
All right. Well, I don't know if there's any more to say about this. We have a resolution in front of us, and I don't know if my colleagues want to add anything else to the mix. There's a resolution here that we need to approve unless there's some.
I'm just wondering, based on what Mr. McCann just said, that it makes sense to wait on the resolution until we have this other more in-depth session that you had mentioned midway through, or perhaps I misheard the intent.
We don't have another session anticipated on the streets master plan. I mentioned the parks master plan or the downtown specific plan.
Okay, maybe
Yeah,
I
so
misunderstood.
there are, to be clear, there are a number of larger plans that are going on. And as our consultant said, or Joe, I guess, said, these things are intended to mesh. I mean, that's the idea, so that the circulation that's identified here influences the downtown specific plan, and the parks master plan has some reference to these things as well. I don't think there's a need to wait on this. It stands alone, but it also influences the others.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, Councilmember Beck, I don't see a need to wait. I don't think that really gets us anywhere. I don't know. It could be, obviously, if we need to amend some major part of this, if there's something that critically comes out
Yeah,
that
I think-
changes,
Mr. Mayor.
like a new development, a new hotel or something.
Yeah, no, I was thinking there was going to be a more in-depth, my perception wrongly was that there was going to be a follow-up where we were going to get into some of the finance, some of the components that underpin it. Because in general, I mean, the plan, it's well done.
Absolutely.
Put the devil's in the details. I'm not sure I'm down with a lot of the optional components, or even sure if they're optional components or regulatory necessities. And I really would like to drive things you mentioned the business, right? Walking, biking, some of the bike. The study mentioned some of putting in bike racks. I was up in Calistoga, a lot of folks on bikes, a lot of bike racks up there where people are putting their bikes in. That's got to help their local businesses. Could we do something there? Or have we explored that? So yeah, it's a big thing. To Vice Mayor's point, it's like 59 million. Wait for it.
Yeah,
So, it's
yeah, I
it's
understand
very
that.
academic.
Yeah.
So the resolution, we're saying yes, and I'm glad for Mr. McCann explaining that, hey, we're going to have to approve these, à la carte. So it's not an approval
Well,
of the
and I
plan
think,
per se.
just to your point, I think that, the master plan identifies some of these ideas and, specific, calls out specific improvements that are a part of that idea. But that doesn't mean it's exclusive. And so let's say, we have emphasis on bicycle and alternate modes of transportation, et cetera. We can go and say, let's take a look at how to make that more attractive. Is the downtown adequately served with bicycle facilities? Not just, stripes and lanes, but racks and watering stations and all of those kinds of things.
Or landmark signs.
And wayfinding landmark signs too, sure. So I mean,
Okay.
that could be something that now that we have this and we have that as one of the programs, let's go implement it, especially those things that are relatively easy and less expensive than the 59 million special. So let's go do that and do that in a collaborative way. It gets people excited. We get some improvement. We can test some things, and then that can be replicated.
And in the transportation field, I would submit that getting something in the plan is always a big deal.
Super huge,
So if you don't
super
have it
huge.
in the plan, no one looks at you. You can't actually apply for any grants. You're just not considered. So it would be defeatist, I think, to not adopt something like this. This is what our community says now, but it's obviously there's a lot. I agree with you. There are a lot of items in here that I wouldn't necessarily support. But yeah, here's where we are. So,
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt the staff recommendations on the resolution.
Second.
all right. Ms. Bradley, there's a motion. Ms. Barrick, second by Ms. Spataroto.
Councilmember Barrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatarato,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasing,
Yes.
Mayor Doring.
Yes. All right. The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you. Good work from the consultants, from the staff. After a year and a half, here we are. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Onward to the Planning Commission. Thanks. Thank you for the public's comment participation.